and scroll. Talk and scroll. Talk and
Subscribe. Hey, what's going on? This is TNS, Time and Space, and I would like to welcome you to episode 21 of Talk and Scroll. Before we begin, I would invite you to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell notification so you can be made aware of any time that I post new content. But anyway, now that the housekeeping is done, I would like to talk about Kevin Samuels today, the recently departed relationship guru, image expert, image consultant, polarizing figure within the black community, specifically for his criticisms of black women. But anyway, I just want to get into it. As I said, he's extremely polarizing, so his death has elicited tons of reactions, ranging in degree from outright criticism to empathy. There are those who are mourning him. There are those who are not mourning him. There are also people who are going so far as to celebrate his death, saying that no one should feel bad for his passing or his demise. But anyway, I want to jump into some comments that caught my attention. So let's talk and scroll. I wanted to read this one. You can give sincere advice without scathing or belittling people. Demeaning and bullying the people you claim you are helping only adds a fresh layer of wounds. So I want to break this down. I don't want to just read it verbatim. I know you can read it yourself. But anyway, as for whether or not you can give sincere advice without scathing or belittling people, I think we have to realize that a lot of these influencers, or anyone, even myself, we all have an audience. So Kevin Samuels, part of his appeal was his raw, brutal honesty. His raw, brutal honesty was actually a part of his appeal. So it's easy to say that, yeah, you could give sincere advice, you could dial it down a bit. But dialing it down wasn't what brought about his success. So everybody's different, you know what I mean? So on the one hand, what one person calls scathing and belittling, another person might hear that, they might be hurt at first, but they might ultimately benefit to say, you know what, that was brutal honesty. That was a difficult pill to swallow, but I'm glad I swallowed it. But anyway, it becomes worse when you realize that there is an audience for that kind of material and you proceed to get rich off shock and insults. This is nothing new. That's nothing new. It's just that Kevin Samuels is the latest example. But there have been tons of people, numerous, way too many to name, who have benefited from shock value. And ultimately, he had a target audience. He has a target audience. Even in death, people will continue to watch his videos and debate his content. So there's a reason for that. So keep that in mind. Anytime you're watching someone who's acquired some success, anytime you listen to an artist, anytime you watch a comedian, whatever or whoever it is, they are feeding a demand, or they're supplying a demand. So as we move on, Kevin often struck me as someone who had profound unresolved problems from his past. After building his platform, he decided to use it in attacking the symbolism of his trauma, camouflaging his vituperations. I'm going to have to look that up on Google. Vituperations as bluntness, straightforwardness. We can certainly debate that. Again, everyone is entitled to their opinion. That's the great thing about social media and the world that we live in, or for better or worse, some people would argue it's a negative, but everyone is entitled to their view. So this person says, I am not happy about his passing. As a matter of fact, I am saddened by it. If there is anything that jumps out about his final moments, it is the fact that he seemed to have exploited his fame, using it as means of feeding his own unrestrained appetites. That's a bit of an assumption. I don't know him personally. I didn't know him personally, so I wouldn't have insight one way or the other. But to me, that sounds like an assumption. He spent his leisure betting the women he bashed, the same women whose confidence he diligently tried to whittle away by referring to them as leftovers or by deploying similar epithets. You could certainly debate whether or not that was right, that he considered, women over 35 who were unmarried as leftovers. But I think that what he was getting at was the need to always examine yourself or be honest with yourself. I think that what Kevin Samuel sought out to do was to tackle delusions head on. He wanted to make sure that people didn't delude themselves into a false sense of security. So, for example, if you were seeking to get married, whether a man or a woman, and you weren't married, for example, let's say that was your goal and you weren't married, I think that at the core of what Kevin Samuels was looking to project to people was that you need to, or we all need to, look in the mirror. We shouldn't fall victim to delusions because those delusions can keep us from achieving what it is that we truly desire. So I think that's what he was getting at. So this person closes by saying, as a Christian, may I opine that death is not the end if you are the light of righteousness. However, transitioning into what lies beyond after a night of lustful self-gratification is not a status I wish on anyone. This is a cautionary tale. That sounds a bit like virtue signaling, to be honest. I mean, ultimately, as far as what happens to us on the other side, that's between us and our maker, or between us and the creator, between us and God. So you're certainly entitled to that view. However, that's really not something that we can truly debate with any clarity or what have you. So anyway, someone said, people, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. I will say this. I am lifting his mother up in prayer. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the debate is that people feel as though they should be able to say nasty things. And there's another comment, I haven't gotten to it yet, where it basically says, well, you can't police how people feel. Yeah, that's fine and everything. But celebrating someone's death is different from having a neutral reaction. You know what I mean? Someone said, I'm never celebrating anyone's death, whether it be Samuel's or Trump. I'm human, enough said. Yeah, that's what it comes down to it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. This is sad and just shows how dehumanizing our society has become. To celebrate someone's death is shameful. I could agree. I mean, ultimately, people are showing their true colors. You know, when you do that, when you celebrate someone's death, ultimately, I've seen other video titles and other content creators have rightly said that Kevin Samuel's death is not going to improve your life in any way. It shouldn't. If you believe that, then you're deluding yourself. That's the same sort of delusion that Kevin Samuel's always talked about. You know, if you think that, okay, Kevin Samuel's passed, number one, the internet lives forever. So his videos will continue to be circulated. So for those saying, oh, well, he's been permanently silenced. No, not really. There's this thing called YouTube. And I'm sure that his videos have skyrocketed as far as the number of views. So let's see. Let's continue to scroll. Okay, this is one that I wanted to talk about. It says, you can't police other people's opinion. If you respected his fight to have an opinion, then respect the opinions of others. He said some disrespectful things and people are returning the disrespect. See, that's the thing though. Ultimately, there are a lot of different cultures and a lot of belief systems and a lot of value systems that talk about why you shouldn't disrespect the dead or speak ill of the dead. That's just, I mean, they're not here to defend themselves, you know, and ultimately we are all going to meet that fate. So someone says, life is savage. If you can't deal with the truth and the messages that this man was trying to convey through his harsh mannerisms, you won't be able to cope with life and become successful. Rest up, Kevin Samuels. I think that's what he was getting at. You know what I mean? He was getting at the fact that delusions will cripple you. And another thing I want to point out too, I hadn't talked about this, but I want to close with this. A lot of women specifically had no problems whatsoever when Kevin Samuels talked about men, when he was harsh towards men. So I want to also give this example. If you were to close your eyes and let's say change up the voice so you didn't know it was Kevin Samuels, I'm sure that people, and women specifically, would have no problem with the times that he said that if you're a man with one job and you're broke, then you need to quote unquote get your ass up and get out there and work at least 20 extra hours to make some extra money so that you're not broke. No one would have a problem with that. Or if you close your eyes, change the voice, and it's not Kevin Samuels, if you said that, or if you said to a man that if you can't afford to take a woman out to eat or show her a good time, then you need to quote unquote stay your broke ass home. Plenty of women have said the same thing, and it was no problem. So I think that what we're seeing, as far as the people who are celebrating his death or, vigorously defending their right to speak ill of him, even in death, those people have no problem, or probably had no problem, when Kevin Samuels was harsh towards someone else. It's only when it's directed at you that it's a problem. Or as the age-old saying that everything's funny until it happens to you. So it was funny then, you know what I mean? Whenever Kevin Samuels was talking about broke men, or, taking broke men to task or unsuccessful men to task and saying step it up, then women were cheering. So the same thing, whenever Kevin Samuels was taking women to task, there were men who were cheering. But then when the criticism was directed towards them, it was a problem. So ultimately, the moral of the story, one thing that I would take from Kevin Samuels, and I'm not saying that I agreed with everything he said. There were things that I vehemently disagreed with, and as far as his delivery, his messaging, but I also kept in mind that he has an audience. He had and has, even in death, a target audience that he was appealing to. We're all appealing to a target audience to some degree. So as critical thinkers, we need to keep that in mind. We need to keep that in mind. Anyone who's communicating has a target audience that they're looking to connect with, to resonate with, or what have you. But I don't want to get off track. I just want to finish by saying that what I will take from Kevin Samuels' life, or his message, or his legacy, is that delusions will greatly hinder you. Delusions will greatly hinder you. So for example, as a content creator, I'm building my channel. If I were to blame the audience for not clicking on my videos, for not liking it, for not commenting, for not subscribing, if I was to blame everyone else or blame all of YouTube for not clicking on my video or not following or subscribing, that will greatly hinder me. And I'm sure Kevin Samuels would say, well, if you're not having the success that you're looking for, you need to get your ass up and make more videos and do whatever. And everyone would have no problem with him being harsh towards me if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So I just want to end with that. This has been another episode of Talk and Scroll. Y'all take it easy.
Talk and scroll. Talk and scroll. Talk and scroll.